Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I am your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, as you are well aware of, that Pakistan, despite the least contributor to the global carbon emissions, but unfortunately among top 10 countries, worstly affected because of the worst effects of the climatic changes. As the climate change accelerates, not only the overall population, but primarily Pakistani women facing the worst kind of challenges, particularly in rural and coastal areas. There are lots of increasing risks to their health, livelihood, and security. So, from extreme weather events disrupting education to food insecurity, displacement, and economic exclusion. Whether Pakistani women is well equipped to adapt climatic changes? Do they have a say in the climate policies? We will try to explore the gender impact of the climate change which are in reality giving or highlighting the worst and alarming situation in the statistics. Try to have the insights of the situation and to explore that what would be the ultimate solutions to it. We have lots of questions and we have to search lots of answers to them. That how we can empower our women to be the active participant in the climate resilience. What kind of policies and legislations and initiatives are actually required to secure the future of our women, because they are the half of Pakistani population. How can we uncover the real challenges because of the climatic changes and the challenges they are facing actually, and how we can amplify those voices because they are at the front line of the climate crisis. We are talking a lot about the climate justice for Pakistan, but what about the climate justice within Pakistan, and particularly to those marginal communities and even to the women who are the half of our population. So, these are the very tricky questions, but these are very important to build Pakistani nation, a resilient nation to the climate change. So, to talk on this very important subject, we have in our studios Dr. Fasiha Safdar. She is climate change expert associated with National Institute of Maritime Affairs. Most welcome to you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your presence here. And with her, Ms. Fajr Rabia Pasha. She is the girls' rights activist and Executive Director, Pakistan Alliance for Girls Education page. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your presence here. And online joining us, as always, my mentor, the senior journalist, environmental journalist, Ms. Afia Salam from Karachi all the way. Thank you very much, ma'am Afia, for being with us online. My first question to you, Dr. Fasiha, that whether Pakistani urban, rural, including the coastal women, do understand the interconnection between the adaptive capacity and the sustainable development, the family supports them, and they are willing actually and to adopt and adapt to climatic changes, to increase their adaptive capacity, getting enough opportunities to enhance their knowledge, and whether they can make climate mitigation and adaptation decisions on their own, if not what's required to do urgently. So, how do you analyze?
Thank you for your question. For this, I would have to divide the Pakistani population, the women population, into two main categories, the urban educated women and the women who are living in the rural areas. So, even in the urban populated areas, according to my estimates, I don't think that a lot of women know about climate mitigation and adaptation concept. The awareness is not up to par as the global levels or the urgency of the situation requires. Secondly, if we talk about the women who are residing in the rural areas or they are not educated enough, they are the ones who are directly hit by the negative impacts of climate change, because they are the ones who are in direct contact with the natural resources. Natural resources and the natural environment is the one interface that is affected the most by climate change. Then the women, they are not even, they do not know about the adverse effects of climate change, and even if they are aware that there is some change happening to their resources or to their livelihoods, they are not financially or you can say socially independent enough to take their own or make their own decisions. They rely on their male counterparts in the families. So there is a systemic ingrained inequality in the system, which exacerbates the impacts of climate change. So we must acknowledge that climate change is impacting Pakistan, but at the same time the impacts are not proportionate, disproportionate. They affect the minorities or those parts of society that are lagging behind in
and they are more
education,
vulnerable when it comes to the gender factor of the climate change, no doubt about that. Fajr, how do you see the UNICEF Children Education Fund State of the World's Children report that was released in November 2024, that termed climate crisis to become more widespread between 2050 to 2059, with 8 times as many children exposed to the extreme heat waves and 3 times exposed to the extreme river floodings compared to the 2000 era. With girls will be more affected by the extreme events as compared to the boys. We are not excluding boys actually, but the report says that as girls have some special needs as well. So that's why their education, healthcare and food security is going to be worst affected because of the climatic changes. So how do you see, because you have a lot of field experience as well?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you very much for talking about such an important subject, something that I think, and as you've said, that we know what we're expecting in the near future, and we need to prepare urgently for all this. And when we're talking about girls and women, we know that they are worse off whenever there is a disaster that hits in Pakistan. And when we're talking about education, just when we had the 2022 floods, 2 million children dropped out of education just in Sindh. And approximately 3 million children across Pakistan dropped out of schools, and most of them haven't returned back to schools, because we've been really tracking in terms of there's a program which was launched called under education in emergencies, and under that program there has been a great tracking system that came into place, where all development sector organizations came together with the government departments to look at how we established temporary learning centers for example. But when we reviewed a couple of months back, and the total amount of temporary learning centers established by all of us together, including UNICEF, was nowhere enough in terms of what was actually needed on ground, right? Because the scale is so, I mean, 3 million children dropping out of school overnight.
Huge number.
Huge number, exactly. Really. So as you can see, I mean, we need to start preparing. And when we're talking about girls, particularly, girls are at even higher risk of not going back to school as well. If, let's just say, miraculously we have a education system, new system in place, a school set up, but they are less likely to go back to school, because girls are more responsible at home. They are responsible for taking care of their siblings. They are responsible for taking care of homes, especially in the rural areas.
There are lots of family responsibilities.
Family responsibilities, as you know, more in rural areas.
But again, it is very important for them to have education.
Of course, absolutely. I mean, that's what we are constantly advocating for. That no matter what happens, the girls should access education. The girls have the right to education. The constitution gives them the right to education. So we cannot say that they have this responsibility, so they need to fulfill this responsibility first, and the boy can go to school, but it's more important for girl to stay home. And we know that in rural areas, a major chunk of our women are working in the agriculture, which is again is not recognized.
We are going towards that as well. But Dr. Fasiya, have we ever focused to train our women to face extreme climate events? As climate change, you already mentioned that disproportionately actually affecting our women health, particularly in the flood affected areas, as Fajr rightly pointed out. Then the drought stricken regions as well, areas with the sudden temperature shifts, and even coastal areas, primarily through the waterborne diseases, infectious and other acute diseases, then hypothermia and dehydration, then malnutrition due to the food insecurity, reproductive, mental and respiratory issues as well. What are your thoughts on that? How much important it is to train our women, capacity building of those women who are already bearing the brunt of climate change?
I must acknowledge that we do have a climate change gender action plan in place, which was put together by the Ministry of Climate Change and IUCN in 2022 under the under the UNFCCC's gender program. That is the Lima Convention work plan for the gender addition and gender to address the gender disparities under climate change. So it depends, it focuses on gender responsive climate change action. It involves a multitude of sectors including agriculture, livestock and even the sectors like coastal and fisheries sector and coastal development. It also integrates the coastal development plan as well. So under that plan there are authorities that are working in some sectors, like in Balochistan they are working in the areas which are drought stricken, and then in Sindh they are working in the coastal areas. There have been community based adaptation plans as well, where the government has tried to involve the local communities, especially the women, because they are mostly they are the ones who are taking care of their families as well as the short scale agriculture and livestock management. So without them, the programs, all the actions taken by the government are incomplete. But again, as Fazir also mentioned, they're not even near the requirement that
because of the huge population
places.
chunk is living in the rural
exactly.
areas and the far-flung areas. So I think so that these plans must have to be more robust, and we have
and they have to be consistent, and they have to be their scale has to be enlarged to such an extent,
very right.
So
very
that
right.
the problem can be
your
tackled.
point well taken. Ma'am Afia, although maternal mortality ratio MMR declined from 359 deaths to around 145 per 100,000 live births, but unfortunately it's still high, and the rate of decline is very slow. Child stunting rate is 40% and more than 40% right now, which is extremely high as compared to the Asian region ratio of 21.8%. While malnutrition is an acute issue in women and children, particularly around 41.3% of the women aged 15 to 49 years are anemic, as compared to global acute malnutrition rate of 17.7% that observed the loss of 6% children aged 6 to 59 months. So how do you see these statistics? Because ultimately it's very alarming, and we have to put more emphasis on our women and children right now.
So Faisal, thank you very much for having me on your show. I think this is so important. You know, you are giving these statistics, and in my mind, I can see the women I have seen in that state, and I've seen the children in that state. They are malnourished, they are weak, they are anemic. Yes, there are cultural factors. Let's just admit to that first. Okay, this is because of the cultural factors. The women are anemic because of, they are repeated pregnancies. Not all children are alive, but they are pregnant throughout their reproductive life, most of their reproductive life. So obviously their bodies are not able to recoup any kind of strength or anything before the next child is delivered. And that leads to that. Then the cultural trait of having the best nutrition reserved for the male child or the males of the house. So women are the ones who prepare the food, but they are the last ones to have it. And then they are not the ones who have the very best of food, they are even the girls. So all these things contribute to those horrific statistics that you just narrated. And then of course we have waterborne diseases. Stunting also has a connection with that, because there is a research report which has made the connection between impurities in the water leading to fetal stunting. So it's not as if, after the child is born and you can do something and you can feed it good food and they'll recover. No, stunting is irreversible. So given all of this, this is an indication of the social status of women in Pakistan. Excuse me. And you had specifically mentioned two very marginalized segments. You had mentioned the rural women, and you had mentioned the women living in the coastal area. But don't forget the third hotspot of Pakistan, which is right up north in the glacial area. We are having repeated disasters over there through GLOF, through the loss of habitat, and those are mountainous areas, and there's not a lot of land over there. So when they lose land because of the floods, they have lesser area to cultivate their food. So all these things have a bearing on that. As far as the question of rural, now I live in Karachi, so Karachi has is seen as a threat multiplier because of the way it is placed in geography. We are a coastal city. We are a very densely populated and unplanned urban city, and we have peri-urban and rural areas within the Karachi division. So all these things are coming into play just in one city. So what to speak of the rest of the areas, which obviously are also impacted. Now, like Fajar mentioned, the dropping out.
So, I think so there is some issue. So, Dr. Fasia, how do you analyze the unfortunate fact that agriculture sector is the largest employer of the Pakistani women, about 7.2 million women working there. Social sector 15%, the industrial sector 24%, the fisheries sector getting surge with women participation, but their work remain largely informal, unrecognized.
Yes.
In most of the times it's unpaid,
Yes.
and even underpaid.
Yes.
When mostly they lack financial inclusion,
Yes.
or access to small bank loans or credits, having limited digital and the internet access as well, there is a widespread gender inequality, and that increases women vulnerability to the climate crisis as well and climate risks. So how do you see the situation, and what are the major steps we have to take urgently to have financial inclusion, digital access and all others to empower women so that they are more cope up to take on challenges?
Yeah. So, the sectors that you have mentioned where women mostly work, like agriculture, fisheries, and then the social sector, they are mostly the ones where women are taking on the minor roles, and they rely on the natural resources. They do not rely on high technology or the latest advances in those sectors, and these are the sectors which are adversely affected by climate change as well. So, the first thing that I think needs to be improved in Pakistan is the literacy amongst females, starting from, of course, the small girls and moving up and even empowering the women as grown-ups as well. So let me give you some small statistics which shows the gender disparity in education. In Balochistan, we can see that in Gwadar 77% of males are educated as compared to 39% of females. In Sindh, in Sajawal and Thatta districts, we have around 48 to 49% of males who are literate compared to 18-19% of females. So, with that literacy rate, what kind of scientific advances or what kinds of financial mechanisms can we take up to those women? So, for the first thing is to increase literacy rate. There can be many initiatives starting from better schooling to adult education. Then we can move on to very easy loans, easy to understand and easy to access loans for females. There are SMEs and even mini to small scale.
Not only for the women, but the whole of the marginal society overall. That must have to be very easy.
Yes,
process.
And that should be an easy process, and those processes are going to.
And actually, microfinancing is basically for those who are actually marginalized and they are poverty stricken. So that is very important to have that.
Yes,
really.
to make that accessible and easy to use for the general public.
Obviously.
That is one aspect that needs to be worked on in Pakistan. And then reaching out to the basic the masses for policy making, include them in the policy making process. We see that there is
we will go to the policy making aspect as well. Your point well taken, Fajr. UNICEF says that at least 242 million students from pre-primary to upper secondary education have experienced school disruptions due to the climatic events in 2024, with Pakistani students losing actually 97 school days, 54% of the typical academic year. Between 2023 to 2024, with the National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA) actually reported that over 2 million children were directly affected by the school closures and disruptions to learning due to the climate related disasters. So these are the official figures, and they are giving us an alarming situation overall.
Yes, actually, I mean, absolutely. I mean, whatever statistics we look at, they present a very, very scary picture actually, and I think, you know, that's why it's important that we. And that's why I advocate for education, that unless and until we are really putting our investment in education, and you know, even right now, almost 1.5% of our GDP is allocated towards education budget, and hence there is an urgent need to increase that investment, because unless education is provided both to girls and boys, we cannot address many of our challenges, social challenges, climate, economic, whatever we are talking about. So, it is very important, and but it is making sure that education is right.
Definitely.
So, for example, we are talking about climate today. So, it is important that climate education is integrated nationally in all our curriculum. There is work happening definitely in, for example, in ICT, the climate curriculum has already been integrated this year, and in COP 29, greening teachers training was sort of a central point as well. So, really training our teachers around climate challenges, so they can really impact that education.
Definitely,
to
you
all
are
our children
absolutely
as
right. Oh, absolutely right. Dr. Fasia, how do you see the status of a Pakistani rural and the coastal women severely affected by the climatic changes because of this? Their resilience on agriculture, livestock, and fishing for livelihood, often lacking the land, the livestock, or the fishing boats ownership rights. Taking on the primary responsibility for securing food, water, and fuel, which are all actually significantly impacted by the extreme weather events that increases domestic burden as well. The income losses, then the vulnerability to the food insecurity, and gender-based violence as well. So, how do you see this situation that women is going through? This is not limited, as Afia was very right, that this is not limited to the rural or the coastal areas. These are already there in the deserts as well, that is there in the mountain areas, but we take rural area as a prime object or a subject that represents the mountain and the desert areas as well. So, how do you see that? The overall situation?
Yes, I believe that climate change disproportionately affects the women. So, let me give an example. If there is a flood and the people have to be displaced, the majority of the housework and the house responsibilities that were already carried by women, they are the ones who have to manage all those activities of their family life outside of the safety of their homes into the open, under the open skies. So, the safety of the women, the safety of the children, and you can it is more, you can say, and especially the girls, it is compromised even more. And then when they are the ones who bear the brunt of climate change the most, why are they the ones who are excluded the most from the power of decision making? Definitely. They are not giving the right to make the decision, not about their livelihoods, not about their policies that are going to impact them. So, we need to empower them in their capacity to play a wider or a better role in the society, and they must be included in the policy making level aspect as well. On the government level, I must say that government has an opportunity to play a role here too. We have a gender plan on action, gender action plan on climate, but we also need to play a role on the national level in the UNFCCC. In the current COP 29.
You are talking about the climate negotiations.
Yes, climate negotiations. Yes, under the climate negotiations. negotiations, the COP29 that happened the last year adopted the previous Lima work plan on gender action. But they are the suggestions for making a new plan on gender is open on the UNFCCC website. So suggestions are open and new ideas are open for the governments to give their input to the UNFCCC, and they can be added.
It's very important that we have to translate our all policies and legislations into
well.
real-time actions.
Yes.
Because
right.
women right now, they don't need statements and conversation
right.
and dialogues and all that,
you're
but
right.
they need action really.
Yeah.
They need support. So, Fajar, do you not think that addressing education challenges requires a multi-sectoral approach?
Yes.
Especially when we have to tackle the population crisis first, then the climate change worst effects as well, the financial constraints we have already, especially only 1.5% of the GDP actually allocated to education.
Yes.
7.7% of the running of the civil government funds and 15.3% of the PSDP, the Public Sector Development Program, funds dedicated to climate sensitive areas, when country's population is growing unprecedentedly at 2.55%.
Yes.
So, how do you see overall benchmarks that on one side we have limitations of funds, then the population is growing, and on the other side the climate crisis is exhilarating. So how do you see that?
I think it's about time that we sit together and we look at our priorities. I think that's very important. And again, I think education has been at the back bench really. If we had really made that investment in education 10 years
Education
ago,
would be the catalyst of change.
Yeah.
it is the catalyst, because you see the thing is, if you are educating children, it has a multiplier impact. If you are educating girls, it has a multiplier impact. When the children are being educated, they also take that messaging back home as well. So let's just say, for example, we have a problem with high level of illiteracy. So if I have 100 rupees and I need to make an investment, I would be making an investment in the children, because I know that those children, those girls particularly, will also go back and educate their parents as well. So you, because, though if we have the funds, adult education is very important. It can have, again, for especially
But
for women.
education actually educates the whole population. Really.
So I think, I would say that, when we're talking about accelerating change, accelerating impact, we really need to think about our
Your point
education.
well taken, because Afia is also waiting for her turn. So, Ma'am Afia, what about women farmers, the farm supporting female workers in rural areas, and the fisherwomen to empower them on nutrition education, the modern farming techniques, livestock, the poultry and fishing techniques as well, the seed, the net or feed procurement, the management and the loss prevention in agriculture or in fisheries, especially when it comes to the in agriculture, the nutrition focused agriculture by cultivating biofortified, zinc enriched wheat and other crops, vegetables and fruits, improve both household health, nutrition, rich diet, improve livelihoods and the financial stability as well, because women needs financial support, which ultimately helps strengthening the food security, the fostering the healthier communities you have, and have enriched export growth. So how do you see overall scenario, whether we don't have to work on these lines when it comes to agriculture and fisheries and all that?
Work on all these lines on a parallel track. It cannot be one thing following the other. We don't have the time. The latest vulnerability index issued by German Watch now puts it at #1. So, I mean, that should actually trigger urgent action. And as the Women's Day theme for 2025 asks for accelerated action for women, it means there needs to be accelerated action on all fronts. So yes, education, but I agree, this is not the formal education we are talking about. We can't put everybody into school. They need information in a manner that they can access and understand of how to save themselves from the onslaught of climate change impacts. And that can be any other kind of education also, any other kind of tool of education. It cannot just be relied on for the curriculum-based education. That is one thing. The other thing is that we have the climate change gender action plan. It has these 6 priority sectors. It was by one of the best things that came out of GCF for Pakistan, and that has been prepared. Now the pipeline projects have to be prepared accordingly. But there are other documents that need to be synthesized with this. We have our national climate change policy. We have the implementation plan. We have the adaptation plan. We also have the finance policy now, that where the finance is going to come for that adaptation. We have seen how the world has changed. We are still having the same kind of discussions in Pakistan. And the finances from overseas have dried up. They weren't very forthcoming even earlier. So we have to eat this elephant bit by bit, and we have to synthesize the recommendation in these documents to the benefit of women and break. This is a behavior change issue more than any other intervention, because climate change and education is seen in sync. But the displacement that the women face is not just because of climate change. It's because of the kind of professions they are in. We have in Sindh a large number of migrant laborers. So they shift from one area to another. This is why their children do not go to school. But there are organizations like, if you don't mind me naming them, the Teachers Resource Center has just come with a curriculum. Before that, with a private sector organization, they have created a whole basta which they can take wherever they go. So we need to invest in those kind of solutions where the informal sector education can also allow them to learn how to save themselves. The women also need to be taught skills.
Families who are actually migrating when it comes to any sort of a climate disaster. So climate change actually affecting the population overall. And we have seen the climate-induced migration patterns as well in Pakistan, particularly in the disaster-prone flood areas, drought and storm-stricken, or the sea intrusion coastal areas particularly. What are the psychological, mental, physical, nutritional, then financial and the livelihood impact on kind of a trauma associated with such a climate-induced migration for women particularly, and women and girls including? So how do you see that scenario? Because actually that impacting the mental health, the physical health and overall nutrition and all that. So how do you grade that?
So that is very intense. You see, you are talking about migration. This is not just migration. If you go to the delta areas where sea intrusion is taking place, they are becoming refugees. So migrants, when things get better, they get to go back where they came from. But they are displaced because that area is no longer there. That land on which they were living is no longer there. So there needs to be a complete adaptation plan, and this is the time now that we need to break it down to the smallest unit. We need to have LAPAs, so local area plan of action, in sync with your local bodies. So each town or each union council at least should have its own plan, because it's a very big and diverse geographical country. And all areas cannot, you can't have a one-size-fits-all solution. So disaster preparation has to be in sync with all the other preparations that we are talking about. That when there is a disaster, what happens to the children? How are they going to continue their education? What kind of education are they going to get? They cannot be, restricted to the kind of education they receive in school. As it is, most of our children are not in school, but they still need information. They still need to save themselves. Similarly, financial literacy for women. And it's not that they are illiterate, so they can't do it. The organizations I have volunteered with, banks have come a long way, and they have started understanding how to create those tools to teach financial literacy to a very marginally literate person, women. So these courses were for rural women, specifically how to have savings, how to have their accounts, how to be able to access some kind of finance to build a small business. So, the grander operation can continue, but these are these small local level interventions that will, over a period of time, start to
Right,
show
Afia,
that
because this is not the sole responsibility of the governments, although governments have to do a lot on that aspect, but private sector and even when you're talking about financial inclusion, banks have to take responsibility for that, and they have to reach out to them because that is the area which they have to address. Fajar, how can we minimize the risk of climate-induced women or girl migration, temporary displacements, the basic service disruption, food insecurity, education deprivation, health risks, when UN estimates that 80% of the displaced population across the different regions are women.
Yeah.
2022 floods alone left almost 650,000 pregnant women deprived their access to healthcare. They given birth under open sky. 8 million women had no access to the basic ministerial hygiene products and toilets even. While it's estimated that Punjab have 70%, KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has 67%, Sindh has 77%, and Balochistan has 80% women adversely affected due to the climate crisis. So how do you see this? This is really an alarming situation. We have to take action.
We do, and I think I would second Afia's suggestion that in fact, you see, I think in Pakistan we have tried and tested a lot of models. We have been testing and we keep piloting things.
Yes.
So I think we've learned in terms of what works and what doesn't. We know the challenges we have at community level, the cultural challenges, the religious challenges, or the poverty level challenges. We know all of this information. I think there's enough of that there, that a lot of experts, we have a lot of good people there. What needs to happen is the implementation.
That is important.
Really. Like we said before, it is the implementation. There are multiple community level initiatives that can be taken, interventions that can be utilized, which have been tried and tested before, which are also cost effective, utilizing the local resources as well. So may that be healthcare, for example, midwifery. You know, midwifery is very
we have run short of time, so a very important
Can I just add one more
definitely,
thing? I just wanted to add, you know, on the decision making and leadership thing. I just wanted to highlight, even at COP29, only 10% of the leadership that was involved in decision making was female. So you have to understand that it also needs to be done at global level. It also needs to be done at local level, at communities level as well.
Female population is 50%.
Yes, of course.
They have to take decisions.
Yes, so
they must have to be empowered. It is really, I don't know that how Pakistan can really develop when you are just losing out the 50% of the population, and that is not the case.
Absolutely.
Government is trying hard to have that, but we all have
it's
to
the scale.
have to actually feel our responsibility. Dr. Fasiya, very brief, how socio-economic barriers to remove to empower our rural, coastal, mountain and all other women across Pakistan to respond to the climate change and in disaster risk reduction, primarily through the access to education, the farmland rights, renewable energy initiatives and all others. So how do you see that, how much important that is to empower our women?
So in continuation of what you and Fajar were talking about, there is a very famous Chinese proverb that women hold up half the sky. So when they hold up half the sky, how can you succeed in any policy or any sector without including those people? I think that this must be they must be empowered at the local levels. They have indigenous knowledge that should be incorporated into the decision making at the local level, and resources and political will need to be put at the right places.
You are absolutely right on that aspect. Afia, very brief, to what extent Pakistan's climate change resilient policies address the gender specific vulnerabilities and adaptation needs? We have lots of policies. So where women must have to be active in that those national and the local climate policy making bodies. Why, how much it's necessary to have women inclusion in the climate negotiations, planning when it comes to legislation and overall policy making to have effectiveness of the climate adaptation programs in Pakistan?
So I think it is imperative, and I won't use any other word for it. The whole problem is that we are carrying a historical baggage. You will not suddenly see, because you see, you have been to the COP, you know the makeup of the negotiating team. So you have diplomats there, you have financial experts there. How many female diplomats do you see who have been part of climate negotiations? So it is the whole makeup of the bureaucracy. Unless and until the numbers rise within across the board, all segments of decision making, there need to be more women economists, there need to be more women diplomats, there need to be more, climate negotiators. So at all level, if there are more women, the reason why you didn't see many women at the COP was because even in other countries, that historical gap still exists. You may have
Your
had
point well taken, Dr. Afia. Thank you, Afia. Your point well taken. Thank you very much for your presence online. Thank you very much, Fajr, for your presence here, and thank you very much, Dr. Saiba, for your presence here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Viewers, as you have just listened to our valuable panelists, and it is important that we have to empower our women across Pakistan, and education is the very important, vital aspect. Number two is that we have to empower at least the literacy to our women and give them proper information access. We have to deal with the different things which are related to the financial inclusion, their training, capacity building, along with that their access to the digital tools, and we have to practically implement all these areas, because there are lots of legislations there. Women must have to be included into the policy making framework as well, but we have to implement each and everything, because the crisis, the climate crisis is actually exasperating, and we have to put focus on gender equality. We have to be very cautious on our approach to have action rather than just the talks. This is the time that we have to take urgent actions to save our population from the worst effects of the climatic changes. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.